Hello. So today I'm going to be reading an extract from the book Black Cat by Beona Gilderoy. This book is about a university student Hugo and his cat Basil, who is also an Egyptian goddess but with the male human form, who Hugo falls in love with. It's a short, sweet, romantic story with a twist of magic and mythology in it. So the extract that I'm going to be reading today is the part where Hugo gets to know that the cat he picked up in the alleyway is actually a goddess. Hugo, are you in the washing room? The boy in question shook his head and answered, his voice cracking embarrassingly in the beginning. Yes, I'm in the bathroom. Okay, Basil said softly. The omelette is ready. Come out and eat it. Hugo got off the toilet, realized he had to pee, and then brushed his teeth before getting out and facing this absurd reality, which was starting to look and feel very, very real. He saw that Basil was sitting on the floor, foregoing the lovely sofas Hugo had, his legs folded lotus-style under him, and a steaming hot omelette in front of him. Basil was sporting a gleaming smile all the while as Hugo sat down apprehensively in front of him, legs folding just like his. For me? Hugo asked, pointing to his chest. Basil nodded, his lips hiding his teeth in a simple but wide smile. It was a fond smile and suited his long face well. Hugo felt the corner of his lips quirk up a little. He sucked in a breath and picked up the fork and knife, cutting into the omelette, and had one bite. Much to his surprise, there was a burst of flavors in his mouth. There was a sweet little tingle he felt at the tip of his tongue before the spice took on at the back of the throat before gulping it down, the between being a fusion of salt and mint along with curry flavor he didn't know how he was getting. He wondered how Basil had known where everything was as Hugo munched down the delicacy. It's good, Hugo said, eyes wide and taking another bite. He chewed and his face lit up further, noticing how Basil's face brightened up too. Basil was rocking back and forth with his hands on his ankles. This is a thank you for yesterday, he confessed. Hugo stopped halfway into his seventh bite when he looked at Basil, confused. You gave me your weird human oat porridge and this? Basil hit a finger at the noisy ribbon thing hanging around his neck, the same sound from last night twinkling through. He had a fond smile gracing his delicate features. Hugo noticed, and his green eyes were twinkling. I'm being thankful, reiterated Basil. Okay, nobody else would know that Hugo gave Basil cereal or human oat porridge yesterday. That was only between him and her, or him, they. He finished eating the bite on his fork and then poked the fork into his arm and winced. Basil's eyes widening with concern at the action. Hugo, what do you think you're doing? Basil's eyes widening with concern at the action. Hugo, what do you think you're doing? His cat was scolding him. What a wild moment. I'm not sure if I'm awake or dreaming, Hugo whispered in reply, taking another bite for being honest. Of course you're awake, Basil said. You gave me your weird human oat porridge and this. Basil hit a finger at the noisy ribbon thing hanging around his neck, the same sound from last night twinkling through. He had a fond smile gracing his delicate features, Hugo noticed, and his green eyes were twinkling. I'm being thankful, reiterated Basil. Okay, nobody else would know that Hugo gave Basil cereal or human oat porridge yesterday. That was only between him and her, or him, they. He finished eating the bite on his fork and then poked the fork into his arm and winced. Basil's eyes widening with concern at the action. Hugo, What do you think you're doing? His cat was scolding him. What a wild moment. I'm not sure if I'm awake or dreaming, Hugo whispered in reply, taking another bite for being honest. Of course you're awake, Basil said, slightly confused, speaking slowly, his accent more prominent than before. I thought I was in slumber when you saved me from the cold stone path. What? Hugo sputtered, pieces of omelette flying out of his mouth embarrassingly. He raised his hand to cover his mouth when he asked, You thought, why? Basil shrugged, the smile not leaving his face. Nobody stopped. It's like I was on a different plane of existence. And then you came along to hold me so gently, taking me home right away. He gave a happy sigh of relief. I was more than surprised. Hugo, at a loss of words, because it's not every day your cat tells you he's happy you brought him home, murmured, You're welcome. I know, Basil yipped. There was another two pressing questions Hugo had now that Basil was talking about last night. I know, Basil yipped. There were another two pressing questions Hugo had now that Basil was talking about last night. He asked the first one. Did you drop the lamp yesterday in this, he gestured to Basil's human body, form? Basil's face went red, his ears tinging a light pink when he replied, I wanted to turn the light off. It's been so long, I've forgotten how to use any of these electric appliances. He gave a sheepish grin as he gestured around the room, his eyes crinkling. How? Hugo cleared his throat, not knowing how to ask this question. How did you become a man? You were a female cat. Oh, I'm a man, Basil said, jutting his chest out and raising his chin, a wide grin spreading across his face, suddenly looking very childish to Hugo. It's just that my deity form is a female cat, so... He gulped down the bite. I'm sorry, your deity form? Hugo's eyes narrowed in complete disbelief at Basil, lips pressed in a thin line. The latter relaxed and said, not at all fazed by Hugo's skeptical look. Yes, my deity form is a black female cat, but I'm actually a man, so I'm both, a man and a woman because both are my forms. He ended it with a large, proud smile, and Hugo's mouth fell all the way to the ground floor lobby. He heard the damn thing fall on an unsuspecting student's heads. He swears it. The second extract that I'll be reading from the book is when Hugo and Basil have gotten to know each other, have fallen in love so much so that Basil has given up his mortality for Hugo. That's a big commitment to a human male, but will Hugo and Basil's love live up to their dreams? Basil had made a lot of friends the moment he joined university, in the middle of the year. Basil had, because of his sunshine smile, his polite way of talking, his grace, his litheness as a dancer, and his equally sunshine personality, made more friends in a week than Hugo had in a year. Even 2 years later, Hugo had managed a total of 5 amazing and stupid friends. 5. And Basil had 10 in a week. That's the double of what Hugo will ever have. But these friends weren't normal. They actually were, but all Hugo could see was red when anyone else was around Basil. Talk about territorial. They lunged at him in the dance room while they were walking in the hallway together, and they would always pull Basil's cheek, pinch him, tickle him, like it was okay to do that. Didn't they know Basil used to be a fucking immortal? He could kill all of these douchebags with the blink of his eyes. Or he couldn't. He can't anymore. Hugo wishes he still could. And as if all these people tackling Basil around and Basil not saying anything wasn't enough, they started asking him to come out for dinners and movies. These parties were The parties were especially the worst. They were nice and would invite Hugo too, but he didn't like how they would pull Basil away from him in these places, and then Hugo would have to resort to calling Jacob and Tiber, because one of them would definitely be there somewhere, Jacob getting wasted while Tiber stayed as sober as he could, and hanging out with them until a very drunk Basil found him and they made their room. And And as if all of these people tackling Basil around and Basil not saying anything wasn't enough, they started asking him to come out for dinners and movies. The parties were especially the worst. They were nice and would invite Hugo too, but he didn't like how they would pull Basil away from him in these places, and then Hugo would have to resort to calling Jacob and Tiber, because one of them would definitely be there somewhere, Jacob getting wasted while Tiber stayed as sober as he could, and hanging out with them until a very drunk Basil found him and they finally made their way back to either one's room. Hugo had some reprieve from these wild nights during the exam season, although as soon as they finished the last of the exams, there was no stopping the partygoers. It had been a week since this party mess had started all over again. Hugo and Basil were chilling in Hugo's dorm, Basil sleeping in Hugo's lap playing games, when a certain Pedro called him. "Hey bro, what's up?" Basil chimed into the phone. Hugo looked on begrudgingly because he knew what was coming. Another invitation to some party. Ugh. "Yeah, sure," Basil said, sparing a glance at Hugo. "Of course he'll come." A pause, a smile on Basil's face. "Yeah, we'll be there, Pedro. Don't worry." Another pause, a laugh from Basil's heart-shaped lips. "Yeah, okay, bye." He disconnected the call and turned to look at Hugo, who was giving his phone the stink eye. Basil sighed and said, "Be happy at least for once." "You're too outgoing." "You're too outgoing, Sir," Hugo muttered. "You're too outgoing, Sir," Hugo muttered, embarrassed that Basil called him out on it again. He always did, and Hugo always shied away. "It's just a house." "It's just a house party," Basil said, falling back onto Hugo's thighs and snuggling between his legs, adjusting himself so that he could play a game on his phone. Hugo was fuming internally. "What about this Pedro asshole pulling you away in between the party and leaving me all alone to search for Tiber and Jacob? How am I supposed to be happy about that, huh?" Hugo thought to himself. Hugo kept fuming silently. He would make Basil realize his mistake silently as well. Nothing grand, just something super simple, enough to open Basil's eyes. "Fine, I'll come," Hugo said finally, and Basil hummed happily. Not like I have a choice," he added just to show his disapproval. And those were two extracts from the book Black Cat. If you've liked the story and you're interested in it, please go and read the story on Saga Fiction. No. I'm doing this only for you, Pranika, because I want your app to do well. So, these were the two extracts from the book Black Cat by Beona Gilderoy. If you have at all become interested in the book and in the story because of these readings, not this. So, these were the two extracts from the book Black Cat. If at all you have become interested in it because of these So, these were the two extracts from the book Black Cat by Beona Gilderoy. If you have at all become interested in the book because of these readings, please go on the Saga Fiction app and buy the book, and it'll be yours to read. You will know exactly how the story goes then. So, go on to either your Apple Play Store or your Google Play Store and download the app now.